I'm going to say something that might trigger you a little. You're not broke. You're undervaluing yourself. Now, before you click off or immediately disagree with me, hear me out. Because whether you're self-employed, running a business, freelancing, climbing the corporate ladder, or working on a job you genuinely love, the question is still exactly the same. Are you actually being paid what you're worth? Not what you can survive on, not what you've settled for, not what someone else decided you were worth years ago, but what your knowledge, your experience, your skills, your energy, and the value you bring actually deserve. Because there is a huge difference between earning money and being valued. And before you roll your eyes or get defensive, this isn't about your qualifications. It isn't about how many certifications you've got. It isn't about how many years you've been doing what you do. It isn't even about how hard you work. Because let's be honest, I know people who work incredibly hard, who are exhausted, who are always busy, who constantly go above and beyond, and they're still underpaid. They're still overlooked. They're still waiting for someone to recognize what they bring. So this conversation goes much deeper than money. It's about how much of yourself you're actually willing to own. If we haven't met yet before, hi, I'm Cherry. I'm a spiritual life coach, numerologist, and energy alchemist. For years, I've been helping people break free from people pleasing, rebuilding their self-worth, and reconnect with who they truly are. So they stop living according to someone else's expectations and start creating lives that actually reflect their value. And one of the biggest patterns I see, whether someone owns a business or works for someone else, is this. People don't struggle because they're not talented enough. They struggle because they don't fully believe they deserve to be recognized at the level they're capable of. So they play smaller than they need to. They stay quiet when they should speak. They say yes when they want to say no. They over-deliver to prove themselves. They undercharge, or they never ask for the pay rise. They accept the promotion without negotiating. They keep taking on extra responsibility, hoping someone will eventually notice. But here's the truth. People don't usually pay you according to your potential. They pay you according to the value you communicate. And that starts with the value you believe about yourself. So in today's video, we're talking about why so many people undervalue themselves, whether that's in their business, their career, their relationships with money, or the opportunities they allow themselves to receive. We're going to explore why you might be undercharging for your services, why you might be afraid to negotiate your salary, why asking for more feels uncomfortable, and why your relationship with money has far less to do with your bank account than it does with your identity. Because this isn't just a financial conversation, it's an energetic one. Today, I'm going to show you how your seventh energy body, your aura self, the architect, influences the value you project into the world. Because before anyone decides what you're worth, you've already decided, and your energy communicates that long before your words ever do. So before we dive in, if you're someone who's ready to stop playing small, to stop questioning your value, and to start building a life that aligns with who you really are, make sure you hit subscribe and tap the notification bell. Every week, I share practical spiritual tools, numerology, energy wisdom, and grounded personal development to help you stop people pleasing, strengthen your boundaries, trust yourself, and step into your next level. Because this channel isn't about giving you temporary motivation. It's about helping you create lasting transformation. And if you're committed to becoming the version of yourself who no longer settles for less, drop a fire emoji in the comments. I'd love to know you're here. All right, let's get into what's really going on. Because whether you're undercharging your clients or accepting less than your worth in your career, the issue is almost never the money. The money is simply revealing the relationship you have with your own value. And that's where we need to start. So let's clear something up straight away. Most people think this conversation is about pricing or salary or how much money is in your bank account. It isn't. It's about value. Because you don't undercharge simply because you don't know what to charge, and you don't accept a lower salary because you don't know what you're worth. You do it because of what claiming more would mean. Think about it. Whether you're sending a proposal to a potential client or sitting in front of your manager asking for a pay rise, the emotional experience is often exactly the same, because you're not just asking for more money. You're asking to be recognized, respected, valued, and seen differently. And for a lot of people, that's terrifying, because the moment you ask for more, you become visible. People might question you. They might challenge you. They might expect more from you. They might even say no. And if you've spent years measuring your worth by whether people approve of you, that feels incredibly uncomfortable. So instead of risking rejection, you settle. If you're self-employed, you keep your prices lower than they should be. You throw in extra sessions. You answer messages outside working hours. You over-deliver because somewhere deep down, you believe you have to prove why you're worth paying. If you're employed, maybe you volunteer for extra projects. You stay late. You work through your lunch break. You become the person everyone relies on. Yet when promotion opportunities appear, you tell yourself it's probably not the right time. Or maybe I need another qualification first. Or I'll wait until someone notices my hard work. But here's something I really want you to hear. Hard work doesn't automatically create recognition. I've worked with people who are exceptional at what they do. Brilliant coaches, amazing healers, outstanding leaders, talented professionals, people who genuinely transform lives. And yet, they're still underpaid. Not because they lack talent, but because they haven't fully embodied their own value. They hope their work will speak for itself. And sometimes it does. But more often, your work opens the door. Your energy determines how people value what's behind it. And this is where people get stuck because they think, once people recognize my value, then I'll believe in myself. But energetically, it works the other way round. You recognize your value first. Then your behavior changes. Then your communication changes. Then your standards change. And eventually your income catches up, whether that's through charging more, negotiating your salary, applying for leadership positions, or finally saying no to opportunities that don't honor your worth. So this isn't really about money. Money is simply the mirror. The real question is, what have you decided you're worth? Because whether you're running a business or building a career, your income almost always reflects the standards you've accepted for yourself. And this is exactly why your seventh energy body is so important. Because long before anybody agrees to pay you, whether that's a client, an employer, or even a potential business partner, they're responding to something much deeper than your words. They're responding to your presence. And that's where self-aura begins to shape your reality. So this is where your seventh energy body changes everything. Because your aura self isn't just about being magnetic. It isn't just about having a good energy. Your aura self, your architect, it's the energetic blueprint that tells the world, this is what I believe I'm available for. And whether you realize it or not, everything responds to that blueprint. Think about the people you've met in your life. Have you ever met someone who walked into a room and before they even spoke, you just knew they were confident? You assumed they were successful. You expected them to be respected. What were you responding to? It wasn't their qualifications. It wasn't their bank balance. It wasn't even their CV. It was their presence. Now think about the opposite. Have you ever met somebody incredibly talented, but they constantly apologize, downplay themselves, question everything they said, or seemed almost uncomfortable taking up space? You probably found yourself thinking, I wish they could see how good they are. Their talent wasn't the problem. Their self-concept was. And that's exactly what your aura self-communicates. Your aura is constantly broadcasting what you believe, what you expect, what you'll tolerate, and what you believe you're worthy of receiving. So if your internal dialogue is, I hope this is okay. I don't want to ask too much. Don't want people thinking I'm greedy. Hope they choose me. That becomes part of your energetic blueprint. And your external world responds to it. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because your behavior starts matching that belief. You hesitate. You apologize. You over-explain. You negotiate against yourself before anyone else has the chance. But when your blueprint changes, everything changes. When your aura communicates, I know the value I bring. I respect my time. I don't need to convince anybody. This is the standard I operate at. Your behavior naturally changes. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing. You stop proving. You stop negotiating against yourself. You simply communicate from certainty. And certainty feels different. This is why I always say, people don't buy confidence. They buy certainty. Your employer doesn't promote certainty because it's louder. Clients don't invest because someone has the longest list of qualifications. People respond to someone who has become congruent, someone whose words behavior, standards, and energy all match. And that's why this isn't really about charging more or asking for a pay rise. Those are simply expressions of something much deeper. This is about becoming someone whose internal blueprint finally matches the life they're trying to create. Because once your identity changes, your decisions change, your standards change, your behavior changes, and eventually your reality has no choice but to catch up. Which brings us to the real issue. Because undervaluing yourself isn't actually a money problem. It's an identity problem. And that's what we need to look at next. Now let's get to what's really underneath all of this. Because this isn't actually a pricing problem. And it isn't really a salary problem either. It's a self-concept problem. Your self-concept is simply the story you believe about who you are. It's the identity you've built over years about what you're capable of, what you're allowing to have, and what you believe you deserve. And here's what most people don't realize. You never outperform your self-concept for very long. You might have a great month in business. You might receive a promotion. You might even earn more money than you've ever earned before. But if your identity hasn't changed, your nervous system will try to pull you back into what feels familiar. That's why some people win more clients, then suddenly lower their prices again, receive a promotion, then spend every day terrified they'll be found out, earn more money, then immediately spend it or sabotage the opportunity. Not because they're irresponsible, not because they're lazy, but because their identity hasn't caught up with their reality. And this is the conversation most people avoid, because changing your bank balance is one thing. Changing the way you see yourself, that's a completely different journey. Think about the version of you that's listening to this today. There's a part of you that already knows you're capable of more. You know your work creates results. You know you've grown. You know you've developed. You know you're no longer the person you were 2 years ago, maybe not even 6 months ago. Yet when the opportunity arrives to reflect that growth, something shifts. You hesitate. You question yourself. You wonder if you're asking for too much. You start comparing yourself to everyone else. And then that inner voice appears, the one that says, who do you think you are? What if you're actually not good enough? What if someone finds out you're not as capable as they think? What if you fail? That voice isn't truth. It's your old identity trying to protect itself, because identities are designed to survive, even when they're keeping you small. Your old identity would rather stay familiar than risk becoming extraordinary, because familiar feels predictable. Predictable feels safe. But here's what I need you to hear. The version of you that built your current reality cannot build your next one. The version of you that created your current income cannot create the income that's waiting for your next identity. The version of you that accepted being overlooked cannot become the version who confidently asks for the promotion. The version of you that apologized for charging your prices cannot become the version who confidently states her value. Something has to change. And that change isn't your strategy. It's you. Because every new level of your life requires a new level of self-concept. Not ego, not arrogance, congruence. When your identity changes, your behavior changes naturally. You stop chasing approval. Stop negotiating against yourself. You stop explaining your value. You stop trying to convince people, because you've already convinced yourself. And that changes everything, because people don't simply respond to your skills. They respond to how deeply you believe in the value of those skills. So this isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about letting go of the identity that no longer is true. Because if you're still living from yesterday's version of yourself, you'll keep creating yesterday's results. And this is exactly why the universal year one matters so much. Because year one isn't asking you to improve the old version of you. It's asking you to become someone new. So now let's bring this into the bigger picture, because this isn't just your personal journey. This is also the energetic season we're all moving through. And that's important, because 2026 is a universal year one. In numerology, a year one marks the beginning of a completely new 9-year cycle. It isn't simply about starting something new. It's about becoming someone new. Every year one asks the same question. Who are you choosing to be now? Not who you've been, not who life has told you to be, not who your fears have convinced you are. Who are you choosing to become? And here's why this matters. Every decision you make this year is laying the foundation for the next 8 years. Think about that. The standards you set, the boundaries you hold, the opportunities you say yes to, the opportunities you walk away from, the way you value your time, your energy, and your work. All of it becomes the blueprint you're building your future on. So if you continue making decisions from your old identity, guess what you'll build? The same reality, just with different dates on the calendar. But if you start making decisions from your future identity, everything changes. Not overnight, but immediately, because your trajectory changes. This is why I love year one. It gives you permission to stop carrying versions of yourself that no longer fit. The people pleaser, the overgiver, person who waits to be noticed, the one who keeps proving their worth instead of simply embodying it. Because none of those identities can create the life you're asking for. Not because they're bad, but because they've reached their limit. And this is where I want to challenge you. Stop asking yourself, what do I need to do to earn more? Start asking, what do I need to become to naturally receive more? Because they're completely different questions. One focuses on effort, the other focuses on identity. For someone who's employed, they might look like becoming the person who confidently applies for the promotion instead of waiting to be invited, the person who negotiates their salary because they understand the value they bring, the person who stops apologizing for taking up space in meetings. For someone who's self-employed, it might mean finally charging prices that reflect the transformation you create, stopping the habit of over-delivering just to justify your fee, speaking about your work with certainty instead of hoping people will eventually get it. Different circumstances, the same identity shift. And here's what I've learned. Life rarely rewards potential. It responds to congruence. When your thoughts, your behavior, your standards, your decisions, and your identity all point in the same direction, your external world starts responding differently. Not because you've become luckier, but because you've become cleaner. And clarity is powerful because clarity creates certainty, and certainty creates momentum. So maybe the question isn't, am I ready? Maybe the real question is, how much longer am I willing to keep living from an identity I've already outgrown? Because if the answer is, I'm done, then this year one can become the year everything changes. Not because the year is magical, but because you made a different decision. So let's make this practical, because I don't want you to leave this video inspired. I want you leaving with behaviors that start changing your life today. So let's make this practical. I want you to leave thinking, I know exactly what I need to do next. Because your self-worth isn't built in one big courageous moment. It's built in hundreds of small decisions, small moments where you either reinforce your old identity or strengthen the new one. First, start making decisions from your future self. Before you make your next decision, pause and ask yourself, if I already believed in my value, what would I do? Not what would the scary version of me do? Not what would keep everyone else happy, but what would be the version of me who fully owns her value choose? Because every decision is casting a vote for the person you're becoming. Step 2, stop negotiating against yourself. This one is huge. How often do you talk yourself out of something before anyone else has even responded? You lower the price before they've questioned it. You decide not to apply before they've even seen your CV. You assume they'll say no before you've even asked. You see what's happening? You're rejecting yourself before anyone else gets the opportunity to. So from today, stop negotiating against yourself. Present your value, then allow other people to decide. Don't make the decision for them. 3, treat your time like it matters. Whether you're employed or self-employed, your calendar tells me more about your self-worth than your vision board ever will. Do you protect your time? Or does everyone else's urgency become your emergency? Do you constantly squeeze yourself in and around everyone else's needs? Or have you decided that your energy deserves protecting? Because people who value themselves don't just talk about boundaries, they live them. 4, stop proving your worth. This one changed my life. You don't need to earn the right to be respected. You don't need to overwork to deserve success. You do not need to exhaust yourself before you're allowed to receive. Because if your value only exists after you've proved yourself, you'll spend your whole life proving. Instead, start operating from this question. How would I show up if I already knew I was enough? Not perfect, enough. Because that's where confidence is built. 5, practice holding discomfort instead of avoiding it. This is probably the most important shift of all. Every time you raise your prices or apply for the promotion, say no, ask for what you want, or choose yourself, your nervous system is going to feel uncomfortable. Don't mistake discomfort for danger. They're not the same thing. Growth often feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar can feel unsafe. But that's exactly why most people never change. They keep choosing familiarity over alignment. This time, stay with the discomfort. Take a breath. Ground yourself. Remind yourself, I am safe to grow. Because every time you stay present instead of shrinking, you strengthen your identity. 6, become someone who keeps promises to themselves. This is where everything comes together. Self-worth isn't just about how you let other people treat you. It's about how you treat yourself. Do you trust your own words? When you tell yourself you're going to do something, do you follow through? Or do you constantly let yourself down? Because every promise you keep to yourself builds self-trust, and every promise you break weakens it. Your relationship with yourself is built through consistency, not perfection, consistency. And that's why this isn't really a conversation about money. Money has simply been the mirror. The real transformation has always been about becoming someone who no longer questions their own value. So let's bring everything together, because this is your decision point. So before we finish, I want you to stop thinking about your bank account for just a moment. Forget the numbers, forget your salary, forget your prices, forget what everyone else is doing. Because none of that is really the question. The real question is this: who are you becoming? Because that's the conversation we've really been having here today. Not about money, not about pricing, not even about income. We've been talking about identity. We've been talking about the version of you you've been carrying, and whether she's still capable of building the life you say you want. So I want you to imagine yourself 6 months from now, not because you've wished for a different life, but because you've become a different person. Imagine walking into work and no longer apologizing for taking up space. Imagine confidently asking for the promotion, because you know the value you bring. Imagine sitting in an interview and talking about your experience without shrinking yourself. Imagine finally hearing yourself say, this is what I'm worth, and believing every single word. Or maybe you're running your own business. Imagine sending your prices without feeling sick. Imagine getting a no and not making it mean there's something wrong with you. Imagine attracting clients who don't question your value because you've stopped questioning it first. Imagine building a business that reflects your standards instead of your fears. Can you feel the difference? That's not just more money. That's freedom. That's self-respect. That's peace. That's walking through life knowing that your value isn't something you have to prove anymore. Because here's the truth. People can only meet the version of you that you consistently present to the world. If you present someone who's unsure, the world responds to uncertainty. If you present someone who's constantly negotiating against themselves, life keeps giving you opportunities to negotiate. But when you become someone who knows who they are, who honors their value, who holds their standard, everything changes. Not because you've become better, but because you've become congruent. And that's what the 7th energy body, the aura self, the architect is really teaching us. Your aura isn't simply something people feel. It's the energetic architecture that tells life how to meet you. Every boundary you hold, every decision you make, every standard you refuse to lower, every time you honor your own value, you're strengthening that architecture. You're building a life that finally reflects who you've become. So before you leave today, I want you to ask yourself one final question. Where in my life am I still asking other people to tell me what I'm worth? Is it in your business, in your career, your relationships, your dreams? Where are you waiting to be chosen instead of choosing yourself? Because today, that pattern ends. Not because someone gave you permission. That's not what I'm doing. But because you did. Because from this moment forward, you don't need to become worthy. You simply need to start living life like you already are. If this conversation has shown you that your relationship with money is actually a reflection of your relationship with yourself, then I'd love to help you take that next step inside my empowerment strategy session or the numerology roadmap breakthrough session, where we uncover the unconscious patterns, energetic blocks, and identity shifts that keep you playing smaller than you are meant to. Together, we'll identify where your self-worth is leaking, strengthen your inner foundation, and create a practical roadmap so your external reality finally matches the person you're becoming. If that feels like your next step, you'll find the link in the description box below. And if you've enjoyed this video, please hit subscribe. and give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs this reminder today. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. What's the one area of your life where you're choosing to honor your value differently from today onwards? I'd genuinely love to know. If you haven't yet looked in the description box below, I have 3 freebies also down there. Grab them all and see which one would help you most. Because I want you to stop asking whether you're worthy. Start becoming the person who no longer has to ask. And I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.